Got caught a little bit off guard with that one, but we gonna bounce back. So let me introduce myself first. My name is Michael Ewing. I'm the Associate Curator at the Frist Museum. I am so excited to be here with you with LaJuné McMillian. She has an upcoming exhibition that is The Portal's Keeper that will open September 27th, 2024 at the Frist Museum. And so we're here to have a conversation about liberated reality design. Where's the clicker? Hold on.
Awesome. And yes, my name is LaJuné McMillian, and I'm a new media artist working at the intersections of, how does this, oops. Sorry. I went back. Okay, great. Sorry. And yes, I have worked in the space for about 10 years now, and one of my longer standing projects is called the Black Movement Library. And essentially, the Black Movement Library is a space for movers, activists, and artists to create diverse extended reality projects, a space to convene, as well as a space to archive our movements and our existence. It was born out of this idea for creating a motion capture database of Black movement. However, when I first started working in that direction, I feel like I wasn't necessarily looking at us and our culture and our humanity as things that should be protected and celebrated, especially because there is such a long history of our culture and of our bodies being exploited and extracted from. And so I wanted to make sure that I was creating a space that was not perpetuating systems of harm on our bodies. And so, what did you press? This one? Yeah. So one of the things that I do with the Black Movement Library is I create movement portraits of each person that I work with. And movement portraits are essentially a way to learn about the lives of the performers and the movers that I work with. So essentially it starts out as a live motion capture performance where they wear a motion capture suit, which you will see in the next slide. But then they also have this overlapping sound score that tells you an abstract documentary of their life. And so I asked them various questions about their movement journeys and movement histories. And what's been really exciting about this process is that I've been able to develop a series that also reaches back to the same performers over time. So I get to see how someone grows and changes and how their movements grow and change and develop over time, which has been really exciting. And in 2021, I got to do a performance on the projected on the Brooklyn Public Library. And so it was a really great experience to be able to show movement portraits as a live motion capture performance, but also as a portal to my library, which I call a library of the future, if you just press play. Yeah. And then I also got to do a workshop series where I worked with various folks to create their own movement portraits, which actually showed at the first 10 minutes. And so, yeah, you'll see each performer, and then you see their documentaries intertwined with these visual elements that I create using Unreal Engine. And then I also create avatars for each person. And so their movements are basically live generating the visuals. And then I'm on the side actually being a VJ, so I change different elements like the particles, particle effects, and post-processing effects as well. And then the following year, I got to translate those movement portraits into a midnight moment at Times Square. And so in Times Square, they have this really amazing opportunity for artists to be able to take over all of the screens each night for a month from 11:57 to midnight. And so it was a really amazing experience to be able to translate a live performance into a multi-channel video experience. And so I think we just need to, Play that. And then also alongside with this, I was able to translate that performance as well into a virtual reality experience that premiered at Tribeca Film Festival at the same time. And so I've been really interested in exploring different mediums, different technical mediums, whether it be through video, virtual reality, projection, and how I can translate and extend and change a story through various different ways and modes of technology.
Back again. How are y'all doing? So I need y'all help really quickly, right? So a lot's going on, sound, video. So what I do is I take a breath. Actually, so when I interview for my job at the Frist Museum, I open my presentation with a breathing exercise. And everyone in the room kind of looked at me crazy, man, because I'm like, no one's ever opened up a conversation with a breathing exercise. But I do this as a way to ground myself in the moment. Because right now I'm feeling anxiety. It's like, it's not going how I imagined it. But then, like, to center myself and to be in sync with everybody in the space, because we're talking about liberation. How can I talk about liberation if I'm in a space of anxiety and a posture of, like, overthinking? So if y'all can help me, right, it's called 4-7-8. So the 4-7-8 is you breathe in for 4, hold for 7, let out for 8, right? And on the last one, we're going to do that 3 times. On the last one, we're going to do a long tone. Whatever sound comes out, just let it come out, right? Are you okay with doing that with me really quickly? All right, thank you. So we get started. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Let it out. Second. In. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 7. Let it out. And this last one, you're going to just let whatever sound comes out. In. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm here now. We back. Thank y'all. So I want to go back a little bit. Me and LaJuné met recently. We had a beautiful Zoom conversation, and we were thinking about the topic for this conference. And it was a really complex thing because we talked about this idea of liberation and how so many times, sometimes as a diversion of caring for ourselves, we can help other people be liberated, but we don't actually embody it ourselves, right? And so we were talking about the process of our different practices where sometimes we center other people's liberation, right? I think about so many people like James Baldwin, so many people that have given us works that's had to become liberated or liberated others, but they sometimes haven't been the recipient of that liberation. And so we want to talk about these duality of our projects. That first was us kind of telling people, like, let me help you, let me hold space for liberation. And then how we kind of got shook to our core to say, well, what are we doing for ourselves? Because if I don't actually live a liberated life, when people are actually liberated, I can't be a participant, right? And then I other myself, right? So in 2019, I have a good friend. Her name is Franchelle Lucas. She was on tour with Solange. I'm from Houston, Texas. Shout out to PV. That's where my grandma went, my mom. She called me one day, and she was like, Michael, man, Solange is brilliant. If you don't know, Solange does not read music, right? So when she works with her band, similar to Michael Jackson, she makes sounds, moans, tones. All of her set design, she designs herself. And the actual song, Things I Imagine, was really, she was working with a producer, and she was doing an interview in the basement in LA, and that was a line that he pulled from the interview. I saw things I imagined. I saw things I imagined. And in my career as a curator, I've worked with civic design spaces, and every time artists come into the conversation, it's at the end, right? They're like, oh, we built this building. Now I want you to like create something really beautiful to convince the people in the community that this is what they need, right? And so I was like, what happens if we actually just allow artists, right, to use their own imagination, right? And so the project here, I was invited by the city of Atlanta, the mayor's office of cultural affairs, to do an exhibition in Pittsburgh, one of the oldest black neighborhoods in Atlanta. And the title of the exhibition I was doing is called Things I Imagine. And so I asked artists, I want you to look at these dilapidated homes, and I want you to reimagine them as a restorative way of restoring these homes. So this is an artist, Dominique Coleman, and these are the homes that he reimagined. Then I work with NOMAS, the National Organization for Minority Architect Students at Georgia Tech. And I challenged one of the students to say, I want you to reimagine like a Southern architecture that speaks to the sensibilities of the South. And like, it doesn't have to be functional. I just want you to dream out loud. And this is what he came up with, the artist. And it was just really beautiful. And then lastly, which one of my favorite kind of projects was actually a local artist, a good friend of mine, Xavier Payne. We were talking about the idea of displacement. And one of the things that I started to do when I would talk to communities, it was like, oh, my house wasn't functional anymore. So I said, let's dream up. So we created this fictitious real estate company, right, called The Avenue. And we wanted to design 3 different homes for the stages of your life. Your first home, your starter home, which is the one you see. Start your days in The Avenue, right? Your family home. And then kind of the lower level, when I would talk to older individuals, they're like, I couldn't live in my house anymore because it had stairs. I needed a 1-level home. And so not only that, I worked with an amazing black writer to create this fictionary story about this gentleman who designed this real estate company. And so this was a way that I presented to the community, not so much in telling a community what they should do, but showing them the passageway of imagination. These are all things that the artists, and giving them the access to the imagination that they can do, right? And this was really dope. I loved it. But what I found was when I left Atlanta after my tenure there for 6 months, COVID hit, right? And something about COVID that was really interesting was COVID made me sit with myself in a way I never had before, right? And I'm really speaking to the students, right? This is 2019. And in my family, there's been 40 acres of land that's been in my family in East Texas for the last 100 years. And so my brother challenged me. He said, Mike, you go to all of these cities, working with communities, curating these things, but you have land that's been in our family for 100 years that you haven't reimagined, right? And I was like, man, if I'm thinking about my liberation, when I started to understand that my great-great-grandfather, Solomon Givens and Lula Burleson, bought this land for 1,200 pounds of cotton, right? And in the deed, he said this land could never be split up and it could never be sold. So there's been land that's been handed down to me. So I'm in these neighborhoods in Atlanta, different cities, trying to reimagine or help people reimagine. But I was like, what do I need? And so that's when this project came called Tiny Solace. So my great-grandfather, let's see if I can play the video. So you'll see a video that's playing. My great-grandfather, his father, built this shack when my grandfather was 7 years old. And my grandfather just moved back to Crockett, Texas, a town of 6,000 people. And while I was living there, I moved there during COVID, stopped curating. I said, I want to sit with myself. I want to sit with my family land. And this shed, we were about to bulldoze. And I said, can I have it? And so I thought about this idea of what would it mean to collaborate with my ancestor? What would it mean to reimagine this cow shed that my great-grandfather built many years ago and think about this as a space of solace for me, right? And so what I ended up doing was, so that's the house, that's the home there, the structure, and that's my family land that you see panning in the image with the drone shot, right? See if I can. So that's the space. And what I did was I deconstructed the entire shed and created hand mapping of the entire space because I wanted to reimagine it anew. So you see there, that's the structure. And then later, I'm not an architect, so I labeled each panel because I wanted to upcycle all of the wood and use it to reimagine it as a space that I can have as a space of solace for me. I called the project Tiny Solace, not Tiny Home, because it's not a space that I go to live, right? Because that's a lot of pressure. Now I have to have irrigation, electric. I wanted to have a space just for peace. I didn't want to call it tiny studios because I didn't want it to have to do anything with labor. It was a space that I went just for solace, right? And so here's the design now, right? And so this is the next project that I'm doing on these 40 acres of land. And so the idea is, as I think about liberation for other people, right? As I think about liberation in my venture as a curator, I have the amazing responsibility to work with artists and help to narrate and support their work. But what I found is, if I can't show up for myself in a real and true way, how can I actually show up for other people that doesn't later cause resentment to myself, right? And so I'm starting to, COVID really unearthed that for me, that now that I have my thing, I don't have to center myself in other things, right? So when you actually create liberatory space for yourself, right, you can actually kind of navigate a new future. And so that's the project that I'm venturing now. It's not about inviting anybody. It's not about how many people are in attendance. It's not about the write-up that it gets. It's not about raising personal funds. I'm funding it myself because I want to create housing for my solace. And so y'all look out for it, because I'm going to have a whole documentary. I have been capturing the entire moment that I'm doing on the family land. And so this summer is when I'm going to build the actual structure in a 2-week period. And so every time I go home to Texas, that'll just be my space I can go for tiny solace.
Oh, I love all that. Yes. So no, I resonate so much with everything that you just said. For me, I'm in a very similar space, especially with Black Movement Library. I was making portraits of so many folks, and visually, I like to describe my work as portals into Black liberated realities. And so, and I think, at least I feel it, how do I visualize liberation, and how do I show it, right? But then also, how do I show up and commit to liberation and living a liberated life? And I think for me, with this show coming up, The Portal's Keeper, it's very much challenging me to do that. I'm looking at it as a abstract autobiography of my life. And so I was actually just asked today, when did I know that, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, when did I know I was the keeper of the portal? And I knew that the portal was there when I was a child. And actually, the first part of the first prayer is all about dissociation and my relationship with my mental health. And so the first stanza is, I just want to know where I'm going when I disappear. I want to know where my voice travels when it's silenced. And I want to dive into the space my mind occupies when it's forced elsewhere. And I want to understand how my body is still here. So that's the beginning of the piece. That's how it unfolds. And then I've created this avatar of me as a child. And funny enough, there are a lot of spiritual connections to the work. Actually, even the term avatar. So even the term avatar is a term in Hindu. And so it is sort of we're creating these descendants of ourselves. And so for me, I have 3 characters in the work, 3 avatars, one of me as a child, one of me as spirit, and then one of me as I am now. And so I've been basically taking pictures from my childhood, also taking pictures of me as I am now, and then I've been developing these characters over time that will be projected into these larger portals that I'm making out of yaki hair. So yeah, it'll be really interesting. And then yeah, I think for me, I'm really interested in how movement and embodiment does not only especially our movements and our embodiment, does not only represent our individual stories, but also our collective stories. And it transcends space and time in oppressive social structures. And so what does it mean for us to really dive deep into that and to celebrate that? And I think it really is a story of of diving deep into trauma to be able to heal it. And also looking at transformation and growth also as sites of pain, but good pain in some ways. And so, yeah, I wanted to end this part. The next slide is actually a piece of it's a performance version of it. So this one will be me. This piece will be me, but it's actually growing into, okay, now that I've been able to do this work, how do I now invite people back into the space? But I wanted to end with this prayer. And so, yes, I guess I'll invite everyone to close their eyes. Okay. Take a deep breath and step with me into the unknown. From this moment into the next, moment of peace, moment of nourishment, moment of overwhelming love, care, and joy, moment of abundance. What is necessary of us to release to make room for this moment? And what is necessary of us to hold on to this moment? To carry this gift into the next lifetime, to our predecessors, to honor our ancestors who gave us this gift of resilience, and what is necessary of us to hold ourselves accountable to this gift. What must be broken to reveal what is sacred? What must be destroyed to reveal what is the truth? May we protect what is sacred to us and others, and may we be honest to ourselves and others. For self-determination and self-actualization are not only hopeful destinations, but are embedded in our ways of existence. And so take a step with me and commit to the unknown, the unseen, and let us take this moment to leave behind anything that does not serve this purpose. For in the morning time, we will rise up again. So let us be grateful for our breath, for our bodies, for each other. For we are the portal's keepers. We must protect our dreams, for they are real. They are enough. They are enough. May we release our fear and step into courage. May we release our uncertainty and step into confidence. We are enough. We are whole. We are worthy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. So these are now, actually, it's really interesting how we both are seeing portals. We actually, this is from the performance, and so you can't really see it, but we're projecting into this pond here. And then these are some of my collaborators, and we all basically did some mirroring and mining exercises to come up with the choreography for the work. But a lot of it is improvisation. And then my collaborator, Nala, she's wearing the motion capture suit now. And so you would be able to see their avatar projected into the space. And then we all actually recited our prayers. We had a journal prompt that we all came together and wrote about, and it was all about what is a Black liberated reality and what does that mean to us. And so we all recited that together.
This is interesting because long before we met, on the 40 acres that's in my family's land, there's a pond. And I found out that in the neighborhood or in the community, my great-great-grandfather was also a minister. And I would meet people in the town that said, my grandmother was baptized on your family's land. It's one of the few historical landmarks in Texas called Gibbons Hill. And so in this video, that's the pointer, sorry. If you could see that kind of similar portal, it was just crazy when she showed me, when LaJuné showed me the video or the dance movement of this portal. When I had friends and collaborators come to the land, they said, man, that pond feels like a portal that takes you to another space. And so, yeah, it just was so what you're seeing now is just aerial shots of the 40 acres of land that's in my family, right? And has become, so for the last 2 years, from 2019 to about 2021, 2022, I was living in Crockett, Texas, right? I was working as an art teacher at an elementary school, right? Because I wanted to do the work on myself. And so one of the things I would love to say to the students is, which I think is really critical, is in 2019, I was doing amazing things. I just come back from South Africa, working on an exhibition that I'm working on for 2028, and I knew that there was some internal work that I had to do on myself, right, to propel me. And I'm saying this to students in particular because we live in such a grind culture, right, where you're like, I gotta do this, and I have to get this internship. And so a funny story is, I'll stop it there, but a funny story is, in 2019, I was inspired to go back to Texas for a few reasons. One, just my mental health, right? My brother always says that cities drive us crazy and we need to go to the land, and I think that's really important. Two was, I just needed time to restore the relationships in my family, the relationships in my community, the relationships that my ancestors had left me because we had left this land, no one was tending to it. So what happens? Fast forward. I come to Nashville for a project that a good friend asked me to do. I do a collaboration with the Frist Museum. I'm working on an exhibition in collaboration with the shows they had called Multiplicity. I fly back home to Houston, right? A good friend of mine and now colleague, Katie Del May, who's a senior curator at the Frist Museum, calls me, right? I'm in Texas, y'all. I'm living in Third Ward. I'm loving my life, right? I just got offered an amazing job in Houston. I'm like, yes, finally, I'm living in Houston. This is it. And Katie calls me and she says, Mike, I have a question to ask you. I said, what's going on? She was like, we've done a search all around the nation looking for a new associate curator. And when I saw you speaking and giving remarks about the artist, something hit me and said, this is the person. I was like, move back to Nashville? Right? But the beautiful thing about that was, if I hadn't taken that time in Texas, if I hadn't taken that time to restore myself, if I hadn't taken that time to replenish and find my space of liberation, I would have never been postured, right? So it's the first time I've ever said it publicly, right? So to make history, right, I'm the first African-American curator at the Frist Museum in the history of the museum, right? When you think about that, right? When I wrote my cover letter for the job, I said, I'll be remiss not to think about my ancestors of people like Aaron Douglas, who came to Nashville in 1929 to start the art department, or Charles Spurgeon Johnson, who became the first African-American president at Fisk University, right? So to be able to have the space and the agency and the role that I'm in, I see it as an honor. But I see it as a reward for doing the ancestral work back home and doing the community work here. And so a good friend of mine asked me, when I was looking between the different jobs, and this is the other key point I wanted to say to you as you think about where you want to work. They said, why did you choose Nashville? Right? Why did you choose to come back? And what I knew was for the last 15 years, I've dedicated my practice to work in and around Nashville, but I have a rich community here. So as you navigate these spaces of inclusion, as you navigate, Christina Sharp says in her book, ordinary notes, she has a quote that she's quoting someone else that says, "Black excellence is the answer to a racist question," right? So I'm very intentional when I introduce myself and I say, I'm the first black curator, but it's that I've gotten the opportunity, but it's really the agency of what I'm able to do as a curator, right? Right, being in the South, right? And what I knew here was I had amazing mentors in Nashville. I have amazing friends in Nashville that I can be my unfiltered self with. My father literally lives on 38th Street, right around the corner, right? And I can go and just sit with my father and eat a meal and not think about any of those things. So as you are navigating your career and your liberation, no matter where you go, one of the things that keeps us away from our liberation is community. You must have community. No matter how great the job is, so many of my peers have these amazing jobs, but deal with so much microaggression. They deal with so much imposter syndrome, and because they don't have anyone around them to remind them who they are, they can forget very easily. And so that's one thing I would love to just say to anybody in here that's navigating that space. Also, I graduated from Frist University, but I did a semester here at Tennessee State University, right? My degree was in art and psychology. And like someone said earlier, what are you gonna do with a degree in art? And I was in tears just a few days ago. My mom flew into town, and my mom was always like, "Baby, I just can't wait till you get a real job. I know you do these projects and these contracts, but you don't have insurance and you don't have a 401k. I just can't wait till you get a real job." And to see my mom in front of the Frist Museum crying, she's like, "You work here? You have an office here?" She looked at me and said, "You really doing it?" But what I had to understand is I had to find the liberation within myself, right? I had to navigate and understand what that meant. And so meeting LaJuné, when we connected, her having an exhibition here in September, there was a connection there because there was a kinship that's happening where then we could talk about this liberation together. And that even showed me this is why I want to be at this museum. I can connect with artists. I can connect with people. When Amari asked me to work with the conference, it was an easy yes, right? Because it's not about my title. It's about the agency and the sovereignty that I create with what I do, right? And so, LaJuné, I just want to say thank you because, and I would love for you to speak about that as well, is that when we were talking about the Black Movement Library, right, you were talking about working with other artists, but then you talked about how you had to go into a space of movement yourself, right, and center yourself. So I wonder for you, how do you feel in this moment in time, right, where you have a solo exhibition coming to the museum, right, and you walk through and you're working with the design team and you're talking about interpretations and programming. What's going through your mind?
A lot. I think someone had said earlier to run into fear, and I was like, yep. Because this is definitely, I feel like it's definitely stepping into unknown territory for me. So I'm really just grateful, and I feel really blessed. But yeah, no, I am very, I feel the challenge, and I'm just like very excited for it, just super excited. I got to see the space, and I was like, it's real. So yeah, no, I just feel, I feel like I'm taking a next step in my journey, and I am not only, I feel like I spent the first part of my career finding my voice, and now I feel like I'm using this part of my career to actually use it. So yeah, that's been a whole journey within itself. So, because it's taken a while to sort of craft and sort of understand my thoughts and how they come together. But now I feel a lot more confident in my ideas and in my voice and in my story. And so I'm just really excited and really grateful to be able to share that with folks. And yeah.
That's amazing. I want to pose, we were talking in our conversation, and this question, if you don't know Dr. Shamel Bell, she was teaching a class at Harvard, and she invited me to speak to her students. And at the end of the exercise, she said, if you woke up, right, the next day after liberation, what would that feel like? What would that be like, right? Sometimes we talk about liberation, And it's like, how do we embody that, right? Like, what does that look like for you? So I'm gonna ask you that question, and I want to open it up to the audience. I don't know how we are on time. Let me know. But if you woke up the next day, you go to sleep tonight, you woke up as your most liberated self or your most liberated reality, what would that look like for you?
You know, I don't know if this is like the best answer, because I actually, I did as well quit my job. And that's sort of what opened the doors to my art career. Like, I quit my job on a whim, and I didn't have a backup plan, which was terrible at the time. And that's when I realized, like, oh, liberation has a price. Like, like for real. Like, I was just like, oh, I'm liberated. Like, yeah, like, and so I think that I really loved what you were saying about when you don't have to, when that price, right, doesn't have to affect so much, right? Because it really has, like, consequences, right? Like, you know, it's worth it. I mean, I believe so. But for me, my life the day after liberation is one where I can be completely 100% vulnerable. I cannot be silenced. I say what I believe in, and I speak up, you know, and I don't feel scared to do that. And yeah, and I believe, and I know, and I also got this question a long time ago, like, I always call it Black liberated realities. Some people say, oh, Black liberated futures, and I'm like, no, we have to, like, cut that out, because it's not something that's, like, far out there in a distant future. It needs to happen right now. And I know that it exists because we're all here. We exist, our ancestors were here, they existed, they lived, we now live. And then, you know, so I know that it's something that's real, and that's something that's tangible. We just have to really tap in and commit to it, collectively, as well as individually.
I think for me, hold on, first let me just let that, I sometimes say, I'm gonna let that, you know, your answer just air out. You know? Sometimes we feel we have to, like, fill in space. It's like, nah, it could be an awkward silence. All right. It's interesting because I started doing, like, yoga, yin yoga, like meditating, and one of the things I learned is that, like, the mind is busy. To tell the mind not to be busy is like, the mind is the mind, it's busy. But not to give, like, when I think about my liberation, I actually think about the desire of nothing, right? It's like, particularly as a Black man in America, I'm always thinking about what I want, who I have to fight for, being seen, being visible. And it's like, to me, liberation is actually waking up and needing nothing, wanting nothing, desiring nothing, right? And kind of being not in a space of nothingness, but in a space where I don't have to, like, plan or plot my safety, plan or plot my agency, plan or plot my language of how I'm going to speak and show up. And so that's one of the reasons I'm learning, is just like, that stillness is what I'm looking for, right? Because we can get lost in that grind, right? Liberation can become a work that we never get to. I love that you said that. I was, you know, we're in the Bible Belt, we're in the South, and one day somebody was like, Mike, do you like VR, do you like AR? And I was like, as a person who grew up in the church, VR was every time I went to church. Like, you'll get it by and by, you'll learn it later. And I'm like, God, I want it right now. I want to augment my reality. I don't want to go to a virtual space. People always send me to these virtual spaces that I may be in, but I want my reality here. And so I think about, how can I either have my reality, right, and alter it, but ultimately, how can I be in a space where I don't need any of it, right? Because when you need something, when you desire something, there's a level of some type of control that can inform that, right? But if I don't need anything, then to me, I think that's a beautiful way of liberation. But I want to, one, say a person that I love a lot. I hope you watching the stream. Adrienne Maree Brown is Emergent Strategy is one of my favorite books. It's biblical for me, but she has a line that I use with every collaboration. It says, move at the speed of trust. But she has another line in that tenet that says, there's a conversation in this room that only the people in this room can have, find it, right? So I want to leave some room for if somebody has a question, because there's a conversation that can happen right now in this moment that only the people in this room could have that conversation. And so I want to give space for you to pose any questions. Two questions. Thank you, Omar. He like, not 4, 5, 2 questions. Anybody? Y'all. Paper, rock, scissors. No, I'm saying, go ahead. Let me say, because I think the live stream. So you're saying, you're asking a question of, you're new into a role, right, curatorially, and you're trying to understand how do you get out your way of like imposter syndrome, essentially, right? Okay. I deal with it every day, right? So I'll say this to you first, curatorially, right? It's very interesting. For 10 years, I've been curating since 2013, right? In my junior year of college, there's a class, a professor, Alicia Henry, an amazing artist, called Arts and Ideas. I was an art major, but I'm not a very good artist. And so my professor was like, Michael, have you ever considered being a curator? Because this studio, it's just not, it's not for you, right? No. But at that moment, it sparked all of my curiosity, asking people a million questions, being able to manipulate or reimagine environments. That's when I knew I wanted to be a curator. Now, here's the interesting part, right? So we're in a similar space. As an independent curator, there's a book I read recently that said, in life, you go from 0 to 10 and it starts over. So as an independent curator, got the grants, got recognition, done international shows, but now at the museum, I'm back at 0. Meaning that, like, before it was about being independent, right? Now it's about, you have a communications department. You don't have to hang the work. You have a whole department that thinks about that. You have an exhibition designer. So I say that to say is, first asset map, what are you great at, right? I tell people these are the 3 links. Your independent link, your interdependent link, and your missing link. What am I really great at by myself? What am I really great at when I collaborate with others? What do I not know but I know I need to know? And so I'm really fortunate that the curatorial team that I work on, both of those curators, most of the curators have been there at least 20 years. And so, like you, I'm like, that imposter syndrome is real. Brene Brown, I love when she talks about the behavior science. She says that no matter what, your mind is going to create a story. Even if it's not there, it has to create a story. So what I would say to you is, check in with yourself, number one, but don't be afraid of being vulnerable, right? When you have those one-on-ones in your program, if you feel safe. Vulnerability without safety is harmful, right? But vulnerability in a safe space is like, hey, I kind of don't know. I think I'm doing this right, but do you think there's better ways that I can engage with this? Do you think there's a better way, or how would you approach this? I always tell people, if you're asking a question where you don't want to show your ignorance, but you want to be curious, I just wonder, how would you do this? If you're in this situation, how would you curate this show? How would you lay this out? And I think it's putting yourself in that position. But what I had to learn was that as a curator, you're always learning. And the moment you think you know it all, you've lost something, right? It's moments I work with artists, I get frustrated. And I think, oh, this is what your work is talking about. And it's like, how am I going to tell you what your work is talking about when you're telling me what it's about? So I say to you is just self-inventory first, and be more curious to yourself and less critical, right? Like every time you think about a criticism to yourself, turn into a curious inquiry. Man, why do I feel this way? What can I do to kind of reimagine this emotion that I'm feeling? Or how can I look at this from a different perspective? And sometimes it's just walking away from it. So sometimes at work, they may look at me crazy. I just go for walks. In the middle of the day, I'm like, I can't be in this, like, I'm an independent curator. I'm used to working in these different environments. If I come to the office every day, this isn't how I naturally work. What I get my best ideas is when I'm going on a walk. So sometimes that's where I'm working. I'm on my phone, and you think I'm not working, but I'm actually processing things. So also find whatever that process is for you that's most healthiest for you as well. Hopefully that's helpful. Anybody else? No.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, can I add one more thing? Also coming back to this, it just sort of popped up in my mind. Just a really, really short story about what actually happened like a few days after I quit my job. I had these pictures of my ancestors. I had a picture of my Nana, I had a picture of my great-great-uncle Slick, and I was like living in this room in this like house with all these people, and something told me to make an ancestor altar, but I was like, oh, like I don't have like a table though or anything like that, so I just like repurposed my windowsill, and I basically put the pictures of my Nana, I put the picture of my Uncle Slick, and I just prayed there every day. And then literally as soon as I started to do that, like my life just changed. I was like mind blown. I was like, oh my goodness, like I got like so many opportunities that came in. And so I want to remind folks that it's like collective, but like to also bring our ancestors and bring our spirit guides into the process. It's really, really important not to like forget them. Yeah.
I'm just going to end it on that and say that, think about that. I just want to leave you with this, right? One, how can I be more curious and less critical of myself, right? Because I know some of y'all at the conference, y'all trying to be like conferencey. You're like, yeah, I want to say the right things, and I'm trying to sell myself. Maybe my next employer is here, but like, I've never sustained a relationship if I wasn't authentic to myself, right? I've been able to hold on to a relationship for a while or a partnership, but when I don't show up as my most authentic self, it never lasts, right? And so I just say to you, like, be curious about who you are, and be curious about the people around you. Like, when you're having these conversations and networking later, less about your title. Just like, when I talk to people, the 2 questions I ask them is, describe your day in 2 colors and 2 textures. And they're like, 2 colors? But it throws them off because I'm not asking you how your day is, right? Because you have an automatic response. And they're like, man, I feel kind of like a mauve and maybe like a sandpaper. And they have to kind of really think about it. And so I just believe that a part of liberation is also like just being curious and being open to the collective is like allowing people to be their authentic self. Quirky, weird, whatever, designers, creatives. I tell people, I don't trust you if you don't talk to yourself. You know what I mean? You know a person that talks to themselves because the way they talk, you like, oh, you rehearsed this. Like, you done sat with this for a while. So talk to yourself, too. It's okay. Put your earphone. Sometimes if you don't care, walk down the street, talk to yourself. If not, put those headphones in. It's not even plugged into anything. I'm just having whole conversations with myself. It's healthy. But yeah, man, just thank everybody for being here, and thank y'all for your time so much.